We're joined today by Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill. You led efforts on passage of a regulatory change regarding permitting, which became law alongside part of the state budget. Can you talk about the SPEED program that stands for Streamlining Permits for Economic Expansion and Development and what this accomplishes?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today to be able to talk about something I've been very passionate about for quite some time. And as part of the budget process, as you noted, this year the Senate included a massive overhaul of our state's permitting system under the Department of Environmental Protection. And some of the words that we heard when it passed was that this particular provision in our budget's fiscal code, which is the instructions for how to spend the dollars in the budget, we heard words like game changer, historic, really meaningful. And as you noted, the program has a very long name. The abbreviation is SPEED, which stands for Streamlining Permits for Economic Expansion and Development. So we call it SPEED, and that's a little easier to remember. And I always joke with my staff when they came up with this name, I said, yeah, it's like from the movie Top Gun, where Maverick and Goose come off and say, I feel the need for speed. Well, the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania feel a need for speed in their permitting process. So let's talk a little bit about the key components. Biggest part of this bill is that we now will allow expedited third-party review of permits. Another really key provision is that there's going to be an online tracking system or portal where people can log in and see where their permits are in the process. Shouldn't be a mystery. It shouldn't be like waiting to see the white smoke come out of the chimney when they pick the next pope as to when your permit is going to be available for you. So just probably almost everyone who's watching this program has probably placed an order online, whether it was from Amazon or some other company, and they'll get a email and say, thank you for your order. And then they'll get one that says your order's been processed, your order's been shipped, here's your tracking number. And then you get an email, it's been delivered to your door. And so that's exactly what we are envisioning for that tracking portal. No more mysteries. You'll know exactly where your permit is. And then the last component is really increased accountability for DEP in the form of paying for costs that are associated with the failure of the department to make a decision on your permit in that statutorily designated time frame for that permit, and to also pay for an expedited third-party review. So 3 major permits in DEP, and these are the permits that really are the majority of applications. And I'll try not to get too wonky, but anything really to do with air, water, or land. So 102s, 105s, and MPDES. And so you think about what does it take to put a shovel in the ground to build a barn on a farm or to construct a new warehousing and logistics operation or for a new business to open. These are the kind of permits that we are targeting. They're the ones that we've really heard the most challenges with. And, I think every legislator, there was broad bipartisan support of this legislation because every legislator can probably tell you a story about the challenges faced by not only businesses, but nonprofits, local governmental entities, individuals, in trying to make things happen here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The language for this provision was placed in the fiscal code. Again, that piece of legislation that informs the administration on how to spend the money. And it really comes in part from legislation that I co-authored with the good gentleman from Cumberland County, Senator Greg Rothman, and it was originally Senate Bill 350. So we're really excited because I think it's a major win for the future of our Commonwealth. We so often talk about delivering on that promise of Pennsylvania. The opportunity for every Pennsylvanian to have great economic success and opportunity, and we know that we have challenges. And so this is a significant step forward, cutting red tape, reducing delays, and creating that groundwork for economic opportunity and prosperity, and keeping our kids right here in Pennsylvania.
Early in his term as governor, Josh Shapiro had signed an executive order to expedite business permits. Can you talk a little bit more about how the SPEED program builds upon that?
Well, I think, that's good, but you have to remember that a governor can sign an executive order with a swipe of a pen. The next governor can sign an executive order with a swipe of a pen, and it can be gone. We have guaranteed that this program will be in place. It's in statute. It's in perpetuity. It takes a lot to repeal a law. We don't often see that happen because governors aren't governors forever. Members of the General Assembly aren't members of the General Assembly forever. But by permanently putting this into our state statute, we are saying that Pennsylvania is open for business. Pennsylvania has great opportunity. You can find that economic opportunity here. You are not going to be bogged down by horrific delays in the permitting process.
What problems existed in the permitting process that originally got your attention to author this bill?
Yeah, so I had a local business owner, and he was a hotelier, and he left Pennsylvania. And he said to me, KPH, I can permit, build, and open a hotel in West Virginia faster than I can get a permit to put a shovel in the ground in Pennsylvania. That's a problem. And so his business left. It went south. Continue to hear from farmers who are trying to build the necessary buildings to grow our food and to feed Pennsylvanians in a large part of the eastern part of our country and beyond. Pennsylvania, southern New York County, Hanover, Pennsylvania, snack food capital of the world. I'm not going to name specific brands, but I can tell you that one of a beloved snack food manufacturer in southern New York County is trying to expand. More product on our shelves. We all love to eat our snack food. More jobs for people in the community. Greater economic opportunity. Growing a family-owned business. And they are struggling to get the permits that they need in order to do an expansion. So when a business says, I need to make a decision, I need to make a decision if I'm going to expand here in Pennsylvania or I'm going to go to another state. When you put significant hurdles like our permitting process in front of a business, they choose to go elsewhere. We want them here.
Historically, why have there been difficulties or delays with the permitting process?
So there have been several different reasons. And I think, we've talked about staffing challenges. In the last couple of years' budgets, we put more funding in for more staffing. And yet we did not see a reduction in the processing time for these permits. And so something had to change. And so by making the process more efficient, by making the process more effective, by putting additional opportunities for review through those third-party reviews, it's going to expedite the process. Now, some people had concerns. Are we saying that we're not going to abide by these laws that have been put in place? And the answer to that is absolutely not. We are upholding all of the laws that are on the book. What we are saying with this is we want people to comply, but we want the process to comply with those laws, to be more efficient, to be more effective, and to be more responsive to the needs of people. I've talked to municipalities who are trying to build buildings that will serve the people of their community, put transportation vehicles in that keep the roads clear, repair the roads, make a high quality of life. even those municipalities are struggling to get the permits that they need to do that essential work to care for people in the community. So it really impacts a broad swath, and we are going to be able to make that difference moving forward. And, I think the good news is we start with these 3 major permits, and when we see success, we'll be able to expand this to other permitting areas and just continue to make our government more transparent and accountable through the transparency tracking portal, and to also make it more efficient and more effective. And I think that's going to help people make important decisions as to whether or not they're going to invest here in Pennsylvania or they're going to look elsewhere. And we talk to these businesses. Why did Pennsylvania not make it onto your list of a place to come and site your new business? Why are you not expanding here in Pennsylvania? Well, because that permitting process is too great of a burden.
Now, you'd mentioned one of the first provisions is allowing third-party entities to review permits. What kind of credentials do these third parties need to have to qualify to review the permits?
Absolutely, because we do want people who have the knowledge and the expertise to make good decisions on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth. And so DEP is setting up the process so that we can ensure that they have the appropriate credentials to do that permitting review, depending on which permit it is.
How do the applicants get paired up with a third-party entity if that's something they desire?
So they can apply to the department and tell them they want a third-party review. They will be given a couple of choices, and then they can just fill out the paperwork and say, we opt for that third-party review. The applicant will pay the cost of the third-party review, and then the hope is, what we've designed this to do is to make sure that it is done in a much more timely fashion. And when the agency or the department, in this case, the Department of Environmental Protection, when you go through them to get your permit reviewed and they do not comply with the designated time frame for review, then DEP has to remit back to the applicant that fee that they put forward to apply for that permit, and then also pay for an expedited third-party review to make sure that it gets done in a timelier fashion.
Is there a similar provision that exists perhaps in other states, and do you see this as a further onus to get the job done on time?
Yeah, so we see different variations. I'm a firm believer that we need Pennsylvania solutions for Pennsylvania problems, but we certainly did look at other states to see what seems to work well there, and then apply it and make it work here in Pennsylvania.
You'd also mentioned that another provision includes an online tracking system to follow through the steps of the process. Are there additional fees tied to that?
No, that is not going to have any additional fees for the individual who applies. Every person who applies for a 102, a 105, and an MPDES will be able to utilize that tracking portal. So often we hear when you're doing a complex project, or even when you're doing a simple one, you may need more than one government permit to do that. And so timing of permits can be difficult. So when you know where those permits are in the process, you don't want a permit to expire for one part of the job before you get the approval for another permit. So I think it's going to take a lot of the mystery out of the process and help people do a better job when they have these complex development projects for the benefit of all of our citizens. Think of hospitals. And, recently our local hospital had a new cancer center, a new cardiac facility. And, there were not only DEP permits, but there were also PennDOT permits. They needed a highway occupancy permit. So how are people going to get in and out of that facility? having good, high quality healthcare in your community is important. So, oftentimes what happens is when they hit those barriers and those roadblocks, they come to their state representative or their state senator. And, jokingly in an exchange with the former DEP secretary, I said, your inability to get these things done in a timely fashion is job security for our employees. There's a lot of work that we need to do, and we're always happy to do it. But there's got to be a better way. It shouldn't just be people who are connected to a state elected official who are able to get their permits pushed through in a timely fashion. Every Pennsylvanian needs that opportunity.
Have you heard any concerns, perhaps from environmentalists worried about the thoroughness of a speedy permitting process?
No, I think we did a very good job of, and I can't take all the credit for that. We had staff working on it, but engaging the stakeholders and listening to the concerns. And, that makes the process a little more complex, but it makes for a better product in the end. And so, again, not maybe as broad and big, it doesn't encompass every possible permit that the government gives, but this is an excellent starting place just because of the volume of permits that are filed for a 102, a 105, and an NPDES. So this is going to be a great opportunity to benchmark how this works, and moving forward, expand those opportunities for other areas. I always think that it is a good thing to be able to ensure that Pennsylvania's regulatory system is not a barrier to every Pennsylvanian's future success.
When do the provisions of the SPEED program take effect?
So we have to give them some time to get this tracking portal up and running, time to establish the credentialing program for those third-party reviewers. So it's not tomorrow. I've talked to some companies who are like, next 6 months. They said, well, it's a little bit longer than that. So we want to make sure that we do it right. So they have, I believe it's about a year in order to get everything up and running and in the process. But help is on the way. And again, when you talk to people who are in this space, whether they're installing solar panels, whether they're building bigger factories, whether they're taking care of a municipality and building a public works facility, or it's a local hospital trying to expand access to healthcare. Everyone seems very excited and very positive about the future that this will bring.
What kind of response have you heard from the business community?
They have been elated. And again, it doesn't matter who I talk to. Again, I spoke to a company just yesterday, the gentleman who does all their permitting for installing solar facilities. And he just said, this will truly be a game changer for us. And he was the one who said to me, so how soon can we get this done? And I said, you've got to give everybody time. We have to make sure that we do it right. But the response from every business sector has been very positive.
As we speak in mid-August, the Senate will be returning into session in roughly about a month. What will your priorities be as you head into that fall session? That's
something that we begin to contemplate as soon as the budget is wrapped up. What's the unfinished business? And what are those future opportunities that we have? I can tell you that one thing that I've been pretty focused on, which is very different actually than permitting reform, is making sure that our DUI laws work the way that they're supposed to. There were 2 recent Pennsylvania Supreme Court decisions that invalidated sentencing standards, and it's really creating problems for our courts, our county court of common pleas, for our magisterial district judges, for our district attorneys, and for people who find themselves kind of tied up and unable to have their cases adjudicated. So we want to get that right, and that's a big priority for me personally. But again, we're going to be looking at always being transparent, always being accountable, and putting in place legislation that's going to improve the lives of every Pennsylvanian and deliver on that promise of Pennsylvania.
Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.